Welcome back. We want to turn now to the war in Ukraine. President Trump held a call today with Ukraine's President Zelensky and European leaders as the so-called coalition of the willing met today in Paris to discuss security guarantees for Ukraine. Administration official telling NBC News President Trump urged Europe to stop buying Russian oil and increase economic pressure on China for helping fund Russia. NBC News White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor joins me now. Yamiche, thank you for pulling double duty today. We really appreciate it. So we know that, according to President Macron, 26 countries have pledged to deploy troops to protect Ukraine. Any commitment from the United States and any shift in what we are hearing from President Trump, because he had been threatening sanctions if Putin didn't seem serious about the peace process, and so far it doesn't seem like sanctions are on the table.
That's right, Kristen. President Trump clearly becoming increasingly angry, it seems, at Russia, or frustrated at least at Russia. We know, that, as you said, that he urged European leaders to stop buying Russian oil, saying that a White House official just told me that Russia makes about $1.1 billion a year sending oil and I should say selling oil to European countries. So the president really wants that to stop. When it comes to China, right now we don't have any word from the White House that they're planning on not having those tariffs be paused. The president is not sort of making any sort of statement on that now. What we do know, though, is that the president continues to say that he wants to see peace in Ukraine and wants Russia to somehow be held accountable to this. But we also know that the president said after that Alaska summit that if he was frustrated and felt like there wasn't enough progress, that he'd wash his hands altogether. So the farther we get away from that Alaska summit, I think the more and more we walk toward that line where President Trump might just get frustrated, Kristen.
Yeah, you know, it's such an important point, Yamiche, and I was speaking to one of my European sources who expressed frustration with the fact that, look, several weeks have passed. President Putin is still not meeting with President Zelensky. Clearly no indication in my interview with President Macron, who said he was incredibly skeptical that President Putin wanted peace. Can you paint the bigger picture for us here? The attacks have continued against Ukraine effectively. Is the peace process, has it come to a halt, or is it waning?
It's a good question. We know that President Trump has said he doesn't want boots on the ground, American boots on the ground in Ukraine, but he's also continued to leave the door open that we might have aerial support as America for this war and for whatever European sort of military action comes next. So the president is keeping that door open. But I can say, just in talking to White House officials, that there is definitely growing concern that Russia is not going to move this any forward and that Ukraine isn't making the sort of concessions that President Trump wants to see. But I think when we go back to this idea that the White House is stressing that Russia makes $1.1 billion sending oil and selling oil to Europe, it really in some ways is showing you that President Trump is not only trying to pressure them militarily, but economically. And it's also interesting because at that Alaska summit and even leading up to that Alaska summit, the White House is saying, well, maybe there could be even economic sort of relations with Russia if this war comes to an end. But President Trump is essentially saying all that could be off the table, and he could at some point just say, look, Russia's going to do what they're going to do. Ukraine needs to figure this out. We're going to be economic sanctions and do what we can. But at the end of the day, he continues to say that this isn't really a war that would have started with him and shouldn't be a war that he will continue to sort of be part of.
All right, Yamiche Alcindor, thank you for bringing us the latest on all the angles coming out of the White House. We really appreciate it.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.